Hey there, people. Welcome to Chapter 2 of my weekly podcast called Chronicles of a Small Business Owner. My name is Bruce, and I work closely with business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs to either help them do three things: scale up, start up, or fix up their respective businesses. This podcast series focuses on interactions that I've had with business owners. Either I'm currently working with them or have worked with them in the past. The podcast focuses really on the discussions or the lessons learned and solutions and programs that we've implemented in their companies successfully. Now, for those that listened to my last podcast, I discussed the main reasons why so many businesses fail and fail so quickly. I stressed that it was a narrow and a one-dimensional focus on the non-human elements of a company, whether they're systems and tools and programs, and not necessarily on the human aspect. That's the business owner and CEO, the individual, frankly, that either makes or breaks the business. Once the business owner identifies with a solution from an emotional standpoint first and implements it in their business, the solution and the benefits are inevitable. I'm not saying this just because it's a good idea or it's just because it's a obvious or rational thought. I'm saying this, folks, because I've seen this over and over again. It never fails. The experience I do want to share with you this week demonstrates one of the first tools that I always bring to most of the business owners I work with that positions them for massive success. In many respects, and I'm sure those that are listening right now have heard it, you've got to have discipline, got to have focus, don't get distracted. Well, I'm not sure about you, but the terminology is not new. It's old news, quite frankly. It's incredibly applicable to the success of a business and its business owner, and it provides a sustainable solution to business owners. In this case, that are particularly challenged with execution, even after being intrigued and motivated by a suggested solution, whether it's a book, a coach, a consultant, a training course, you name it. The problem is they're great, but why aren't people executing? Well, this experience focuses on a business owner this week, Robert. He owns and operates a painting business. Robert started up his company about a year ago, and I've been working with him to scale his business, approximately about 2 to 3 months right now as I record this. When Rob and I started talking with each other, he immediately struck me as an intelligent guy who was well-read and could rattle off the latest and greatest business books and the tools and the systems that came with it. I'm sure many of you have done the same thing. Great business book, refers it to friends, family, and colleagues. So what? What happens after that? Not much. Rob was no different. Rob was told by other business owners that he needed to chat with me, as I was well known as someone that could help business owners implement these solutions in businesses with great success. When he mentioned this to me, my first response to him was, why hadn't he utilized or implemented any of these great ideas and best practices if he knew of them and had a nice guide and a lot of these fabulous books to actually implement this in his business? Well, his response to me was quite simple, but again, not surprising. I've heard it over and over again. He said, and I quote, folks, "Bruce, I can't seem to find the time, and when I think I have some time, well, I get distracted by the things." There was a long pause after this, and he said, "I do think I may be challenged with attention deficit disorder." Now, folks, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Many people, including Rob, may indeed be challenged with ADD. But regardless of that, his business, Rob's business, was about to tank if he couldn't take what he knew and made this a reality in his company. What I did then was I introduced a concept and tool to Rob several weeks ago, in a coffee shop, of course. It's nothing new, but its introduction to the business world has been, not very well grounded, in my opinion, a little convoluted. There have been many books and authors that have tried to bring this to the forefront. But it doesn't really help. Why don't businesses absolutely use this tool? Well, let me tell you about the tool first. It came from an individual named Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th President of the United States from 1953 to 61. Before Dwight became president, he served as a general in the United States Army as Allied Forces Supreme Commander during World War II. He later became NATO's first Supreme Commander. Quite an impressive guy. Dwight had to make tough decisions continuously about which of the many tasks he should focus on each day. This, of course, finally led him to invent the world-famous Eisenhower principle, which today prioritizes actions or tasks by urgency and their relative importance. Urgency, again, is the time sensitivity, and importance is the relevance that that action or task has to the business. Folks, I'd encourage you to go to the link as you see on the screen, www.eisenhower.me/Eisenhower Matrix, or just go ahead, click the link, and you'll get there. So how did Rob benefit and continue to benefit from this? Simply put, most of us are encouraged to work on our time management skills. But folks, to be frank, the term time management, it's not aligned with how our human brains work. I said this to Rob, and he was taken quite back about this and said to me that, what else do I do, right? I felt like saying, well, Rob, systems. Just implement the system. Just go with the system. But you know what? Of course, I knew better, and I wasn't going to say that to him. Many of us just assume, well, here's a great tool, here's a great system, go ahead and use it. I also asked Rob, and I ask you folks listening to this, is how many people did he know or was aware of that attended a time management course and came up being transformed into the time management knight in shining armor? Well, Rob smiled, and I'm sure you're smiling too, and said, true enough, but what then is the solution? I then said to Rob, change time management to action management. Yes, semantics, but give it a go and see what happens. Actions and commitments to these, and the commitments to these actions are tangibles, and that's what our mind loves. It can take hold of them and work through what needs to be executed, and why, very importantly, it needs to be executed in the first place. The why a task or action needs to be executed is the powerful combination of the logical and emotional ingredients that actually make execution happen. Without the rational and emotional elements working in concert with each other, there is very little way that we're actually going to make ourselves great executors, in this case, in our business, and moving our business forward with extreme action. So how did Rob make this a reality? Well, first, like most human business owners, you never know, there may be robots out there, robot business owners, one suggesting this to him initially, this was frankly the last time we even spoke about it, after I would say at least about 7 to 8, well, no, not that long, but maybe about 5 to 6 weeks later. Now, yeah, I have to admit this was by design, but for good reason. After some time, I followed up with Rob in one of our business building sessions, and I asked him, his action management, how is that moving forward? How is it progressing? Well, he sheepishly responded to me by saying, well, it's not. I reassured Rob that his reluctance was not abnormal, and not to give himself a hard time about it, but to show him how he could change this, how to implement this in a powerful way, asking the why a task or action needs to be executed. This is how I explained it to him. So, essentially what we did was, got a piece of paper, drew the y-axis and x-axis, broke it up into 4 blocks, and did this. The x-axis were the actions that are more important. And for those of you that have seen this, probably proves my point why I'm saying this again. It is so powerful, why don't we use it, right? The problem is that everything is jumbled in our heads in an emotional mess. Because when we look at all our tasks lists, everything becomes highly important. So all our tasks are simply there. And in some cases, we mix the highly important with the highly urgent. Can't distinguish between the two. So what happens? We become paralyzed. this inactivity is caused by the emotional filter that we use to make those decisions. Now, the urgency level, that time sensitivity level, the word urgency doesn't engender a feeling of calm, I'm sure, for many. Urgency is the time to execute a particular action. The exercise of first asking if the task or action is important or relevant, and then using urgency to split this item away from the emotional to the logical. This is where the magic starts to happen, folks. While I was working through this with Rob, the sheer number of items he had on his to-do list, nothing like that. That's just nothing, right? Was staggering. No wonder this poor guy was so paralyzed in terms of executing. As I said, I could have given him the best system in the world, but without execution, it means absolutely nothing. He had over 130 items on his list. And to no surprise to me, all of them were, well, important. This is where it comes to fruition. Once we start breaking up or differentiating between something that's important but something that's also highly urgent, right? Suddenly things start to manage themselves. Suddenly we have less to deal with. In many cases, I actually got a piece of paper and covered this whole point, this whole section up. And what's left over here was tangible, something he could use. Rob saw this, and man, I just absolutely love this face, and I can continuously see this with other people. His reality has changed from someone that didn't have enough time, quote unquote, to someone that had his weekends to himself. He finally started to increase his business volume in a matter of 2 weeks. It's partly due to a great tool like this. And, this might not seem overly striking, but man alive, it's a great tool. The Eisenhower principle, the urgency importance tool. Success didn't necessarily come from this tool, even though the visual image was highly impactful on Rob and his business. It created a snowball effect that enhanced his performance even in other areas of the business. For example, last week, Rob mentioned that the number of sales leads that he had that week had increased by almost 45%. He cited the reason for this because he had managed to fit in working on a lead magnet that he could finally execute and advertise for his business. The crazy part is that I asked Rob, well, how did you do this? Well, he said, it felt like I had more time to do it. Felt like I had more time to do it. Folks, for more information on not just this tool, but how Rob used this tool and the process we went through to make this actually happen for him, feel free to send me an email to info, I-N-F-O, at 4workplaces.com, as you can see on the screen. And I'd be happy to send you a copy of the tool video tutorial on the process that you can follow yourself. I hope you found this information helpful. And again, look forward to seeing you again next week for Chapter 3 in our series called Chronicles of a Small Business Owner. Thank you.